Nick Hornby, tell us how you got involved with adapting Brooklyn.
Well, the co-producers, Finola Dwyer and Amanda Posey, I'd done an education with them, and they'd optioned the book, and one of them is my wife. So she brought the book home with her and asked me to read it, and it went on from there.
Mm-hmm. So what about it resonated with you?
Well, first of all, I thought the book was unbelievably moving, and I didn't know of that many films where you could make what felt like a classic love story, which didn't have side or didn't have any irony, and just spoke very directly. So that as a challenge resonated with me. In terms of the themes of the book, I think the way I hooked into it was, growing up in a small town and wanting to get away.
Mm-hmm. Now, how strictly did you adhere to the book when you were adapting it?
Well, very strictly, but Colin tends to pull away from scenes a little bit, and leave some things up to the imagination of the reader. So I had to sketch in some of the gaps, and I made a couple of small changes that they were small, but given the delicacy of the structure, they felt quite big decisions to make at the time, but I don't know if anyone else necessarily would notice them.
Well, I mean, what is your process like when you're doing an adaptation? How do you start?
I just start. I don't outline or write treatments, and I think that might be something to do with being a prose writer, because it takes me way too long to try and write a treatment, because when you're a prose writer, you're used to the idea that your prose has to be in some kind of shape, and of course treatments, it's basically garbage writing, because it's not for anybody. So I would much rather just start from the beginning, and that's what I did. I started from the beginning of the book, and I just went through it, and the decision that I'd made already with Amanda and Finola was that everything was going to be about this girl. I mean, the book is about this girl, but any loop in the story we took out. We went right in on her as close as we could get.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you're a very prominent novelist, and you talked about prose writing as opposed to script writing. Is that the only major difference you find in writing novels and writing screenplays, or?
Well, of course, when you're writing screenplays, you need to have some humility, which you don't need as a novelist. When you're a novelist, you're God, and when you're writing a screenplay, you have to get used to the idea that lots and lots of people are going to tell you what to do. But actually, at this point in my life, I quite enjoy that, as the people I've worked with have been really smart and really sympathetic, and I'm sick of sitting on my own in a room. So I'm looking to collaborate wherever I can.
Let's talk about your collaboration with John Crowley, the director of this film. What was that like? What did he give you as a director that helped you?
Well, confidence that I was doing the right thing. When John came on board, I'd probably written 2 or 3 drafts, and the script was in good shape, and we made a couple of delicate changes to key scenes, and it felt a little bit like we were working on a ship in a bottle, because the work's very fine, fiddly work, but if you got it wrong, then the whole thing collapsed. But John wanted the same thing. He wanted to go in close, with the camera and everything else on Baelish, on Saoirse, and so we were both pulling in the same direction. But John's by trade is a theatre director, and theatre directors are a dream to work with if you're a screenwriter, because John treats the script as if it's the text. He doesn't say, oh yeah, well, here's a piece of crap I can work off. He wants to get the script to a stage where he can treat it as if it were a play and it's set.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think there's a single word in the film that wasn't in the book.
Really?
Sorry, a single word in the film that wasn't in the script. Nobody's extemporized in any way whatsoever. John stopped them from doing that.
Mm-hmm. What was the biggest challenge that you faced in writing this script? Was there a particular passage or particular scene or character that you had some kind of difficulty with?
I think the biggest challenge of the book is that, you know, it's based around a triangle, but the triangle is not bang in the middle of the book. The first guy comes in halfway through, and the second guy comes in right before the end. So easily the biggest challenge was to create the Donald Gleason character, Jim, with as much detail as you can, so that he is, in the end, a viable alternative for Ailish. And you haven't got very much time or room to do that. So that was what required the most work and thought, I think.
Mm-hmm. Was it always like that from the beginning? Did you try to experiment with maybe changing the structure a bit or anything like that? Or
no, I thought what worked beautifully about the book is it's like a trick that's played on the reader, that she meets this guy in Brooklyn and she falls in love with him, and actually we fall in love with him as readers. And when I was reading the book and she got back to Ireland and she met this other guy, my first reaction, I think everyone's first reaction, is I don't want to know about this other guy. I like the guy back in Brooklyn. Don't go messing around with an Irish guy. Forget about him. And then like 3 pages later, you're thinking, oh no, I can see this. This could work. And the balance that Colm achieves in the novel is a marvel to behold, I think. And one of the things that pulled me in was the thought that if you could get that on screen, it would feel great.
mm-hmm. Well, there's also this great conflict between not just the two men, but the two different worlds that these men are from.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about that, creating that in the script?
I didn't have to create it very much. I think that any person from the British Isles who was born sometime between 1945 and 1980 knows the power of America in the imagination. And I grew up in the 1970s mostly. That was when my teenage years were. And it was really like that then, let alone the 1950s, that America was somewhere that we all wanted to go there. Lots of us wanted to live there. It had the music that we wanted and the movies that we wanted. But more than anything, it had a degree of physical comfort that we didn't have in Europe. I mean, in the 1970s, there were periods where we were frequently without electricity. We all had parents and grandparents whose toilets were in the back garden. Very few of the houses had central heating. And you know, there's a line in the book, in the movie, where Ailish says to a customer in the shop, "Here, you're only cold outside during the winter." And I think everyone in Ireland, everyone in Britain knows what that means. It means that evenings were spent being cold and running out of hot water. And so what worked for me, thinking about it, was that America in the 1950s was the same as America in the 1960s or 1970s, that it had stuff that we didn't have and we wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah, and I mean, it still feels very timely and relevant to today. I mean, even though the events of the film take place some 60 years ago, it's still an experience that a lot of people still have.
Yeah, well, I think that we all move towns. I mean, many of us in Britain and America get out of the place that we're born because we want something more for ourselves. And there is a great cost that comes with that, I think, that we lose a part of ourselves, and we're never the same again. And you know, you look at the world at the moment, and Europe has a migration crisis the likes of which we haven't seen since World War II. And every single one of those people who are trying to escape from Syria and move through Europe en masse, every single one of those people has one of those stories. And I think if you think of it like that, it's devastating. And to go in this girl's head and experience that wrench with her, maybe it is quite timely.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, and congratulations on the film.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.